गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः तस्मै श्री गुरवे सच्चिदानन्दरूपाय विश्वोत्पत्त्यादिहेतवे तापत्रयविनाशाय श्रीकृष्णाय वयं नमः श्रीकृष्णाय वयं नमः। ॐ योऽन्तः प्रविश्य मम वाचमिमां प्रसुप्तां सञ्जीवयत्यखिलशक्तिधरस्वधाम्ना अन्याश्च हस्तचरणश्रवणत्वगादीन् प्राणान् नमो भगवते पुरुषाय तुभ्यं प्राणान् नमो भगवते पुरुषाय तुभ्यं प्राणान् नमो भगवते तुभ्यं। Now we are in the chapter 1 section 3, and here the definitions of this love, definitions of the supreme love are being given, and here Narad Muni quotes various teachers, various rishis, sages, what their definition of love is, and then eventually he will tell what he has understood out of his own experience. So the first one is, this is the I don't have this verse.
15.
But I don't have it. तत्प्राप्य तदेवावलोकयति तदेव शृणोति तदेव चिन्तयति। Again, तत्प्राप्य तदेव अवलोकयति तदेव शृणोति तदेव चिन्तयति।
We don't have that one.
15th?
What we have is the Lakshanani.
Page number 5.
Huh?
Page number 5, 15.
We are on verse number, sutra number 14. Sorry, 15.
15?
15 is
It's
the
the one there.
Lakshanani
Oh, so I looked at the wrong one then. Yeah, I looked at the wrong one. Rewind. tat lakshanaani वाच्यन्ते नाना मतभेदात् तद लक्षणानि वाच्यन्ते नाना मतभेदात्। Its bhaktis, its meaning bhakti's characteristics are being described now due to the existence of different opinions. Just like we are living in this, studying in this room, each one has a different viewpoint of this room. The room is the same, but how each one is looking, it's a unique angle, it's a unique position that you are holding which others are not, and therefore your view of the room is different. Similarly, the view of devotion based upon their experience is what they have put forth, and therefore here understand this, that when different teachers are telling their definition of love, it does not mean that, arey yaar, this is very confusing now. Which love should I practice, this one or that one or that one? Yeah, it's the same love, but it is their take on it. Because this love that each one experiences, or each one of these teachers have experienced, this love is a subjective experience. It's not something that you can give, "Acha bhai, ye laddu le lo." It is someone, and that love which is being experienced subjectively within their own hearts, they cannot deny that. It is their own direct experience. And therefore, whatever this love is, what love you experience, what love I experience, what he experiences, what everyone in this world experiences, the love is the same. Just like the space that we are all living in, whether we are in America or India or Australia, the space is the same. Similarly, this love experience in the heart is exactly the same. But what we try to do, or what sages are trying to do, is put it into words which cannot be put into words. It's a direct experience. It's that deep, intense love that you are feeling for the Lord, it cannot be put in words. You will say it brings tears to the eyes, but that is not a complete definition. It brings thrill in your body and mind. That is not justifying it either. That you go into ecstasy, that is also not it. And yet it is all of them put together, isn't it? So love is that. If you love someone, you don't have to say that I love you. Your just eyes tell that person whether you love that person or not, isn't it? So this love, it goes beyond the barrier of language or boundary of language. So don't get confused when different teachers are giving different definitions, wants Narada. And at the same time, this love, once it expresses in your heart, just like once the flower blooms, the fragrance spreads, isn't it? The flower doesn't say, I'm going to spread the fragrance. The fragrance spreads. The bees come to get the nectar. Similarly, once the love blooms in your heart, it is infectious. Anyone who comes in your vicinity, in your sphere around you, they get affected by that love. And with this, we go into the 16th sutra. Pujadishu Anuraga Iti Parasharyaha Pujadishu Anuraga Iti Parasharyaha. Parasharya is the son of Parasharya. Parasharya was the father of Maharishi Vedvyas, who fathered him, and through a fisherwoman. Eventually that fisherwoman became the empress of the empress. She married Shantanu, and the whole Mahabharata begins from that point where Shantanu marries Satyavati. But before she became Satyavati, she was a Matsyagandha, the one who stank of fish. It's not Gandha. Gandha is not, it's a stank of fish. And she used to take people from one bank of the river to the other. And one day sage Parasharya was coming there, and he got into the boat and she felt she was young, and she was taking him across the river, and at that time Parashar Rishi, he said, this is the most opportune time in the creation. It will never come again for a long period. At least in this creation it will not come again. And for a holy soul to take birth. And there and then he marries her, and a child is born to Matsyagandha. And that child is Maharishi Vedvyas. And after he is born, then she continues to remain young, and eventually Shantanu finds her and falls in love with her. But this sage, Maharishi Vedvyas, who has compiled all the Vedas, who has written from his memory all the Puranas, a great sage of his times. In Bhagavad Mahapuran, he is talked about as one of the avatars of Lord Narayana. What does he say? He says, in the worship of the Lord with deep love and firm attachment, thus declares the son of Parashara Sri Vedyas. And in this way, here he says that when a person has deep love with deep attachment in the worship of the Lord, this is the supreme love, and that is his definition of supreme love. And what is this worship that he is talking about? Deep attachment with deep love in the worship of the Lord. Now that worship of the Lord is not just on the altar, but understand that according to him, the entire world is worthy of worship. And therefore, we must serve others, we must share others, we must be with others in the manner of worship, and that worship should be carried out with the with the understanding that the one whom you are serving is not other than the Lord. Then that worship will be fulfilling, otherwise not. And what happens in this worship? Parasharaji, Maharishi Vedvyas says, in this worship, the sense or the organs of perception and organs of action and the mind are brought together at the altar. So when we see the puja, for example, when we do the puja, if you go to Tirupati, if you go to Mahakaleshwar, if you go to Rameshwar, if you go to Madurai Meenakshi, if you go to, so many temples are there. How beautifully they decorate. You go to Sringeri, the Sharda Devi is there. How beautifully they decorate in the morning. Just by looking at that statue with beautiful fragrant flowers, the incense, the fragrance that is there, so many lamps, everything you forget at that time. Your senses get attracted towards that image. Your nose is enjoying the divine fragrance that is permeating there. Your ears are listening to the continuous Vedic chants or the bell that is ringing, and it just transports you into a different realm. So here it is told that worship brings the sense, organs of perception, seeing, hearing, touching, feeling, tasting, and also the organs of action and the mind to come together towards one focused goal, and that is the worship. And in this way, when all your faculties are focused only towards one, that means single-pointedness, and that single-pointedness, where there is single-pointedness, there alone grace of the Lord will flow. And it is only by the grace of the Lord that we can recognize the Lord's true nature, the Lord's true beauty, the Lord's presence. What we are focusing on is the image, on the environment that has been created. But where has it taken the mind is not in that, is not the statue only. It's much more. And in this way, to be, so he says that one must always remain engaged in chanting, in doing the worship of the Lord, worship of the Parmeshwara, with all aspects of one personality, and those aspects are body, breath, mind, intellect. So senses at the level of body, organs of action at the level of body, senses, and also the mind. Everything should be focused towards one purpose, and that is to have the vision of the Lord, to see the Lord not only in a statue, not only in your heart, but the experience of that Lord revealing Himself in the heart must bring about a change in our vision, wherein we are able to see the Lord in everything and everyone as we move around. So it becomes, such a person is then worshipping everything and everyone all the time, like the gopis. Now if you take it from the ritual point of view, a person who is doing the rituals, if you are doing the rituals mechanically, it's not going to give you any results. But if we understand why the ritual is being done, when we move in this world with this body, breath, mind, intellect, equipment, some actions will be performed. And ritual or puja, etc., havan, etc., the fire sacrifice, etc., are certain rituals which are like a compact action, where when we move around in the world doing actions, our actions get dissipated, senses get dissipated, mind gets dissipated. But when we bring all those faculties towards a puja, every action, every mantra that is chanted, every hand movement that is going on, nothing is out of order. There is order to the whole process. What you have to say, what you have to think, what you have to see, everything is so beautifully charted out when you are doing a fire sacrifice or a puja. Even if you go to a church, they don't give you communion first. First they take that bowl with the incense or that thing, and they go around all the people, and then they come back, then they light the lamps, then they light the incense, and afterwards then the discourse or some words of prayers are there, and after all those prayers then communion is there, isn't it? Similarly in our puja also, the Shodashopchar puja is there. Thinking, remembering, inviting, making him sit down, washing his feet, washing his hands, giving him water to drink, giving him bath. All those things, steps are there. Same in the Havan, invocation of the fire. Invocation of the fire cannot be done just by anyone. It has to be done in the proper manner with the proper mantras. Each mantra has its own meaning and significance. So the person who is doing this is so alert and vigilant, not only at speech level, but also what he is seeing, hearing, touching. Because when his senses and his organs of action and his mind is focused on that with devotion, he transcends the action. He transcends that action. You will see many people who are doing this puja and all, while doing puja, they go into meditation. They have not even completed the puja. In the middle of the puja, they will go into meditation. They don't realize, because they were not doing this worship as a mechanical act. They were doing that worship with deep devotion. So, the various things that you look at, the various chants, the various activities that are done, all of these are not meant for public thing, but they are meant to transport your mind into the realm of the Lord. This is what is the definition of Maharishi Vedyas. And therefore he says, devotion is attachment to puja. Through action, you can reach the Lord, because that will purify your mind. Sutra 17 says, this is given by Maharishi Garga. What he says is, Kathadishu iti gargaha. Kathadishu iti gargaha. A great attachment to listening to the stories of the glories, etc., is devotion, bhakti, according to Maharishi Garg. What Maharishi Garg, the sage Garg, says that, and he gives importance to the technique of bhakti, wherein the instrument of speech is given more importance rather than organs of action and perception. The faculty of speech is subtler than the faculty of body and senses. Senses and organs of action are the grossest. Subtler to them is the organs of perception. Subtler than organ of perception is the speech. Subtler than the speech is the mind. What did you say? Sound. Speech is sound. Subtler than the sound is the mind. Subtler than the mind is
Silence.
the Lord. The Lord. Silence is Lord. So in this way, so he gives the importance to the speech aspect of devotion, and he says that to listen to the stories of the Lord, the Supreme Lord, and to repeat those stories with joyous abandon, with deep love in your heart. Not because you have to fill up time and you are telling a story. Those children to whom their mothers have told stories, which stories do you remember? That story which mother enjoyed, or whoever was telling you, they enjoyed telling that story. That story you will remember. Which subject you understood in the school? The one which the teacher enjoyed teaching, isn't it? That subject became easy for you and you enjoyed attending that class. Same thing is here also. So it is not a mechanical telling of the story, reading from the book. Yesterday we were listening to the story of Namdev Maharaj, isn't it? You enjoyed it? Huh? Just telling that story, different emotions were being felt inside our heart, isn't it? And that itself, that exactly the point Garg Maharaj is, Maharishi Garg is telling. That we must tell the stories, recount the stories of the Lord with great devotion, and let the tears flow, let the thrill come, let there be ecstasy while you are telling the stories of the Lord. And in this way, the one who is telling the story, he is also ecstatic about telling the story, and the one who is listening to the story, from them also tears are rolling down and thrill is happening within them. Then that is the definition of devotion according to Maharishi Garg. Because in that melting of the mind, why tears come? When we listen to a story, because those certain incidents, when that child said, "I will break my head on the stone that you are standing if you don't come and eat," is just words, but what they are indicating to our mind is something much more than those finite words, isn't it? And that melts in the that time we think, man, it will be so nice. When will I be able to do something like that? May not be break my head, but when will I have that type of devotion that I go all out for the Lord? When will I have that innocence to approach the Lord in that or similar manner? And that melts. This is all going on inside our mind and heart when we listen to the story. And that breaks down the mind. Because mind understands, man, I'm so caught up in this world, and yet I really would love to be a devotee of the Lord, and that tussle brings the tears. And in those tears is the purification of the mind. And where that mind drops that tussle, drops that doubt, and merges into the Lord, the mind also doesn't come to know. So, realization is not in some specific experience. And these, and then in this way, again Narad Muni also says, here he doesn't say, then he brings what does Shandilya Rishi say about devotion, about bhakti. In the 18th sutra he says, Atmaratya virodhena iti Atmarati virodhena iti. Okay, again. Atmarati avirodhena iti shandilyah. Atmarati avirodhena iti shandilyah. Together. Atmarati avirodhena iti shandilyah. The devotion for God, which is not opposed to attachment to the inner self, is true devotion according to sage Shandilya. This is takes you to another level. He says that the love for the Lord and the devotion in the heart and the surrender to the Lord, if you are practicing that, if the devotion to the Lord and surrender to the Lord, if it is happening, if you are practicing that, and if it is not taking you away from yourself, then it is true devotion. We see this happening in the world. They make the concept of the Lord more important, and after doing all the puja, they are ready to do all the crimes in the world, isn't it? Why? That prayer to the Lord did not bring them to their own essential nature. So here he says, if this devotion is taking you away from your essential nature, which is the consciousness, then it is worthy to be dropped. Then it is not devotion. But if that devotion, while you are practicing it, while you are chanting the mantras, while you are doing the puja and the worship, while you are doing the nama japa, etc., etc., if it is not taking you away from yourself, then that is true devotion. True, isn't it?
It's non-duality, isn't it?
Huh?
Non-duality, isn't it?
No, you can say that, but he is saying that devotion should not take you away from your essential nature. Meaning, if you are caught up in the activity, if you are caught up, if you feel guilty that you have not taken the name of the Lord, if you feel guilty that you have not done the puja, if you feel guilty that you have taken the name of the Lord without taking shower or done worship without shower, then where is your attention? Is it on yourself or is it on the body? It is on the body, isn't it? That is not. You must ever remain with the self even while doing the various chants and the various worships. Then it is true devotion. So he says, if the devotion, this is from one angle, that you do not move away from the self. Second, all that devotion that you practice, whether as worship or as the recounting the stories of the Lord and japa, etc., if it is taking you into the inner recesses of your heart, how do you know you are going into the inner recesses of the heart? You go into samadhi, isn't it? Tears start flowing.
Bliss.
You start feeling the bliss and joy and ecstasy within yourself. Then understand you are practicing devotion. So, the mere chants and the mere action, if it is not making you dive deep into yourself, then it is not devotion. If it is only lip service that you are doing, if it is only physical actions that you are doing, I am doing right now a physical action which is called speaking, isn't it? Speaking is an action. If this speech that is going on, if it is not making my mind to dive deep into my heart, into the Lord, then I am not a devotee. In Vedanta they say, you speak, yes, but you witness that the speech is happening. You witness that the speech is happening. Then you are doing saying correctly, speaking correctly. Then you will not get involved. Here, because that speech what we are using is about so many things. But when we are doing worship and devotion, we are only taking the name of the Lord, nothing else. And if it is taking you to the witnessing, or in word, language or devotion, if it is making you dive deep into your own self, if it is making you aware of your own self, what is the third stage of japa? Vaikhari, Madhyama, Pashyanti. What did I say yesterday? What did I say yesterday regarding to Pashyanti? What happens at Pashyanti when the mantra enters into your heart? What happens?
Comes in the throat.
No, that is Madhyama.
Feel oneness.
No, yeah, more specific. When it happens, at that time is the ajapajap sthiti. The mantra is going on in your head of its own accord. You are not trying to chant it. It is happening of its own accord. At that time you realize that, hey, the mantra is going on and I am knowing that the mantra is going on. That means I am not the one who is chanting the mantra. Then who? From where is it coming from? The moment this question comes, from where is this mantra coming from? You will get into the para, the last stage. The mantra will go back to its source.
So when you talk about Pashyanti, isn't it that wherever you see, you only see the manifestation of the Lord?
That will also...
That way you don't need to even think about any mantra, you just constantly everywhere.
It will not happen. Not at Pashyanti. Not at Pashyanti. But at Pashyanti level, one thing happens, that every incident, that every experience, every contact that you have in the world will take you back to your mantra. You will start seeing that everything is nothing but the expression of the divine, but it has not become your experience. Conviction is there, but experience is not there. Experience will only come after you get into, when the mantra goes back to its source. That means you go back to your source. At Pashyanti, it's a default process going on. But till now you were a chanter. You were chanting the mantra. But now you have come to realize in your Pashyanti that the mantra is chanting by itself. You are not doing anything. So when we do this meditation in the mornings, we ask you to observe the breath. You think, I am breathing. I am not breathing. My breathing is shallow or heavy or fast, whatever. No, breathing is happening by itself. We want you to come to that point where you come to realize that breathing is a phenomena happening of its own accord. You have got no say in it. So get out of the ownership that you are breathing. When you get out of it, then there is a possibility you can come to the mind and come to realize that I am not thinking also. Only then it is possible. So we are doing the Om mantra. By chanting that Om mantra, don't come into the silence straight away. Keep chanting till you realize that you have stopped chanting but the mind is still chanting Om. It will happen.
That means
When you are otherwise doing something like you're cooking and then you feel that it's going on. in your-
Let it go on. Let it go on. But that time you can't say what is its source.
Yeah, that's what I want.
If you can, while cooking, if you go back to the source, then you will the chapati will burn. Because you will go back to the source. The moment you go back to the source, you will lose all semblance. The whole world will melt away like the matrix. Because the whole world is held only by the mind. And if mind is not available to hold it, because it has surrendered to the Lord, who will turn the chapati? Who will turn the dal? Who will put the oven off? Nobody.
if I am not chanting, I am not listening, finally there is no I.
There is no I. No, we never said there is I. Because the mind has an alphabet called I, according to Vedanta, the I appears at 3 levels. It's the same I. It depends upon you which position you take. First is the ego I, which is attached to the body, breath, mind, intellect, world, etc. Second is the witness I, which is aware that the world is there but is not attached to the world. This is the ajapajap sthiti. And the third is where the absolute I, where the witness I, instead of looking at the world, becomes aware of itself and the world vanishes. Urvarukameva bandhanat. And that is the absolute I. Then what else remains? Then the world does not remain. Then only I without a thought appears. Same thing happens. The Lord without the mantra remains. And that Lord without the mantra is not other than the consciousness that you are. See? So don't create a concept of a Lord in your mind.
Swamiji, can you explain again? The witnessing and the servant.
Huh?
The witnessing and the last one, Swamiji. Witnessing is that you're watching it's happening.
You are watching it happening, just like you are watching the mantra happening in your mind. You are watching the breath happening. Same way you watch the mantra happening. So when you are a witness, that also happens. You cannot bring it about. If you do the things correctly, then it happens. Then if the whole world is happening and you are just watching.
That's it.
At the inner world on the seat of meditation, if you are not a mantra chanter, you are contemplator, you are inquiry, the mind is throwing up thoughts, but you are not attached to them. You are just watching, not giving value and attention to those thoughts. But how long will you keep watching those thoughts? When will they end? Will they end in this lifetime? How many you have collected, do you know?
Plenty.
Huh? From lifetimes. Now, once you come to realize there is lifetimes of data stored in my subconscious mind, which is coming out one after the other as thoughts, because mind wants to empty it. And the best place to empty it is when you are witnessing. It's a flushing happening.
So there shouldn't be any more problem then.
It-
They're gone.
Yeah, but how do you know when will it end? You can sit watching for 1 day, you can sit watching for 2 days, 3 days, 1 week, 1 month. Eventually you will get tired of watching also.
And we are collecting
And
also.
who knows that one day some thought comes which is more powerful and so potent that it catches you again. So how do we stop this process of watching the world pass by, watching the breath pass by, watching the thoughts pass by, watching the mantra pass by? Yes, we have come to this recognition that I am not the chanter, I am not the world. Then how do you stop it? That's the third step.
Disinterest. If you're disinterested.
No, you are already disinterested, that's why you are the witness. Witness cannot be more disinterested. He is already
So
disinterested.
if you're not interested anymore, why should it be a bother to you?
Pardon me?
Why should it be any problem to you if you have no interest in it?
It will not be a problem to you, it will not be a bother to you, but sometimes the urges that come out of the subconscious mind are more powerful than the witness can handle. Witness is only that strong as long as it is maintaining the distance between himself and what it is witnessing. But if some thought comes out of the mind, a temptation, a hunger, or anger, or something, some project in the mind, and before you know, witness has become the small I, the ego I. It takes ownership of that thought and goes traveling with it. And then after a few months you realize, "Arey man, where did the 3 months go suddenly?" And you come back again to the witness.
And the risk is we are continuing to collect also. It is not that we are stopped and we are
But when you are witness, you are not collecting. You are not collecting. All you are doing is sublimating all the thoughts which are appearing. But before any one of the thoughts from the subconscious mind catches you again, how can we stop this whole journey? How can we bring a conclusion to this whole thing?
By
And
going to the original.
correct. So those are the 3 options that we give on the seat of meditation.
What was it actually?
What are the 3 options that we give? Remain in the silence, but now you cannot go into silence because you are watching something. So you find out from where is this originating from and where it is merging back into. You are watching the thoughts, isn't it? What is that source from where this thought is coming? And what is that source where this thought is merging back into? That will bring conclusion. The journey doesn't have to go for lifetimes afterwards or months afterwards or years afterwards. It will stop there and then. If you are sincerely, single-pointedly focused on the point, from where is this thought appearing from? Suppose we are chanting Om Namah Shivaya. Where is the Om appearing from? From where did it come out? I am not chanting. From where did it come out from? Because I am the witness, isn't it? Now knowingly, I put attention from where is this Om coming from and where is this Shivaya merging back into. What is its source? The moment you become focused on that, the mantra will also go away.
So, yeah, isn't that also witnessing only?
Huh?
Where it's coming and where it's
No,
going?
that source cannot be talked about.
No, that observing or even looking at where is it coming and where is it merging into, that is, can't we call it as witnessing as well?
Yes, you are observing.
Yeah.
You are observing. But your attention is not on the mantra. Your attention is on the origin and conclusion. Sandhi. From unmanifestation, it manifested, and where the manifestation is becoming unmanifestation. That point you are catching. So you are not caught up in the mantra, but you are going back to the source. Why you are doing this? Because this witness is still in the habit of objectification. He needs to find out. He is not coming to this conclusion, hey, I am it, that's it, story over. Because the moment, even if he says, I am that, then which that? Questions come, because mind is not purified completely. So therefore this mind takes the support of the mantra, and through the mantra we come to this Pashyanti Para. Para is that stage where we go back to the source.
What are the other two options?
Which one?
So three options is one, to remain in the silence.
To remain in the silence as presence. To remain in silence as presence. Second option, look for the source of the mantra, where it is emerging from and where it is merging back into. And the third one, which is the subtlest, which is I am observing the mantra coming and going. Then who am I? Who is the observer? So any of these three options you take, they come to the same conclusion. The presence in the silence is also the absolute I. The source of the mantra, where the mantra is coming and merging back into, is also the absolute I. And the witness, aware of itself, is also the absolute I. But the same conclusion is brought about, happens through the path of devotion also. So Shandilya Maharaj here, Shandilya Maharaj said that if the devotion and the surrender to the Lord, if it helps us in recognizing the true nature of our inner self, that is the Atma, then all such actions can be called devotion. But if devotion is making you to search the self objectively, then it is not devotion. If devotion is taking you into, making you dive back into yourself and recognize it, then it is devotion. Conclusion should be the self. Conclusion should be the Atma. Conclusion should be the Lord Divine. And in this way, according to Shandilya Maharaj, having thoughts in the mind is not contrary to realization. As long as you do not move away from your natural state of Atma, realized masters we see, they are continuously established in themselves, yet they are thinking, doing whatever they are talking, the mind is still functioning, isn't it? So we have to come, he says you have to come to that. So remain aware without compromising awareness. If all these acts of devotion are happening, well and good. Look at it from other way. All these acts of devotion, if they are taking you to this state of awareness, then it is devotion. And in this way, only then the physical act in which the organs of action, organs of perception and the mind were involved to do the worship, those acts can become meditation. Chanting of the name of the Lord can take you to meditation. Listening to the stories of the Lord can take you into meditation. Why? He is not against all this. But if all these are taking you into meditation, which is into yourself, then these are acts of devotion. Otherwise, what do people do? They chant the mantra, they make the mala more holier than the self. They make the book more holy than the self. So they will do the puja of the book, they will do the worship of the book, but with regards to the self, I don't know what that is. I know what Lord is. See? So they get fixated on that. The goal is not clear for them. So here it is told, and if you are in love with the divine theme, then it will happen. There is no doubt about it. And therefore Narad Muniji says that love alone is the path. By love alone we can attain the love. There is no other way by which you can attain love. By eyes alone you can see. There is no other means of seeing other than the eyes. When in Bhagavad Gita it comes, Uddharet Atmana Atmanam. By the self you can attain the self in the self, isn't it? Similarly, by the love you can come to love, attain the love. Invoke that love within your heart. And in this way, the devotion can lead to the liberation of one. Now, in 19th Sutra, now after having mentioned Maharishi Vedvyas, Shandilya Maharaj, and Maharishi Garga, now Narad Muni is summarizing the whole thing and putting forth what his view with regards to devotion is. What is his definition of devotion? Naradastu tadarpita akhilacharata tadvismarane parama vyakulateti naradastu tadarpita akhilacharata tadvismarane parama vyakulateti. According to Devarshi Narad, total dedication of all actions at the altar of the Lord and at all moments of forgetfulness of the Lord, excruciating pangs, is supreme devotion. So he has taken all those and put together. So here, what he says? He says, Narad Muniji is integrating all the views prevalent at that time and putting them in a capsule form. And therefore, he says that first point is to surrender all activities, secular and sacred, unto the feet of the Lord. That is an act of love, he says. Then the second one, he says, is to remember with love at all times the Lord himself. The third point is to feel extremely desperate when one detects that even for a moment he has not been remembering the Lord. That is when the various masters wrote abhangas. Tukaram abhangas, Jnaneshwar Maharaj's abhangas, Eknath Maharaj, Namdev Maharaj. Those are all songs of separation, felt as pangs of separation within their heart. Why have you forsaken me? When Jesus said on the cross that, "Oh God, oh Father in the heaven, why have you forsaken me?" That was not an act of depression. That was, he felt, because he must have felt the pain. For so much time he was he was totally body disintegrated. But somewhere along that he must have felt that my attention is not on the Lord, it is on something else. In that pain he called out, "Oh Father, why have you forsaken me?" And the moment he said that, his attention went back to the Father. And the moment it went back to the Father, he went. So when Mahatma Gandhi passed away, when he was shot, what did he speak? "Hey, who shot me?" Did he say that? No. He said, "Ram, Ram, Ram." It is not a mechanical chant at that time. He is remembering his own essential nature, which is not other than Ram. Only then it will come at that point of your life. When that Udiya Baba who was the teacher of Akhandanand Maharaj, his disciple means his sevak, who was pressing his feet. He went to the toilet and someone else had taken one of the leg of Udiya Baba to massage. And he suddenly felt so bad inside his heart, why he has taken my leg. And then he was frustrated also. Why am I thinking like this? It's only a Swami, but it is the Swami because of whom this type of thoughts are coming in my head. If he was not there, I would not be thinking about the leg, that it is my leg. And he became so frustrated, he picked up the axe and cut open the head of the master. There and then in front of all the people in Vrindavan. But that Udiya Baba, who told the future of every person, whoever wanted to know, knew what his future was holding for him. But not even for one moment did he try and change his destiny. When the head was cut, the skull was cut open, the only one word out of his mouth, Ram, and he passed away. Have we come to this point that when we go to sleep, involuntarily Ram is coming out? When we eat food, involuntarily Ram is coming out? Even better, any time when you are talking, if you stop for 1 second also, is in the mind Ram coming or the name of your Lord coming? That means you have not become cooked yet. You are not cooked yet. You are not matured yet into devotion. This happens only when in the ultimate stage. So, but this is the sign that whenever you are free, you go for a walk, what is coming in your mind? When are we going to Kailash? When are we going to Char Dham? When are we going to next class? What is there for the menu in the afternoon? This, that. Ram is lost. He is thinking, where should I go now? To whom should I go? They came to study devotion, but they are not even remembering me. So this needs to be cultivated again and again, with the right attitude. So that from Vaikhari to Madhyama, Madhyama to Pashyanti. Till Pashyanti you can come. After that, no, till Madhyama you can practice. Pashyanti happens. Ajapajap sthiti happens. Involuntary chanting of the mantra in your mind happens. And after that, going back into the source also happens. But try. Try to get to this point. So what Narad Muni is doing is trying to bring clarity to in our dull minds, that this is the journey, this is the destination, these are the practices, these are the stages, these are eventually these are the pitfalls, obstacles, etc. He will come and tell us. So and the fourth one is that, no, the third one was that he feels extremely desperate when one detects that even for a few moments he had forgotten the Lord. In Vedanta you will say, even for a few moments, if you are not a witness, that brings those pangs, that I must get back into. Yes, first day I was telling you that person who has resigned, he is with it. He does not want to go back to work. Why? Because he knows once he goes to work, he will not be in the same state anymore. The world will catch him again. Why? Because he has not got established in it completely at the moment. Still a novice at it. He knows he's there. He's there at the threshold. He's there witnessing sometimes. But because of the inner bubblings of the mind, the thoughts sometimes catch him. If thoughts are catching him now while he's got nothing to do at home, how much more the thoughts will catch him when he goes to work? So he says, I'm not going to go back to work. I'll spend more and more time because I want to finish this journey once and for all.
Does he have any wife and kids? Or
No.
just single?
No, he doesn't have wife and kids. But that courage that how long will I keep running after the money? He has made in a little bit, not enough to buy a house also, not even a studio apartment. But the courage that, Swamiji, I want to just finish this off. I am frustrated with this whole journey now. That's one way of looking at it. So that is giving him more impetus to continue to remain in that witnessing mode. Because what's the other option? Get caught up in the world and lose. And wash away all the hard work that you have put till now. It takes just one moment. You were saying something about one moment on the dining table. It takes one moment to change your life upside down, isn't it? Because he was saying the person had gone to Kailash, he came back, went to the China war or Pakistan war, one bullet, became paralyzed. One moment. You don't know
When
that moment comes.
Mount Everest.
Mount Everest. You don't know when that one moment may come into our life. So prepare. But we take it for granted that all this, I'm not going to war, nothing to worry about. You sure that while you are walking out on the road, that tree doesn't fall on you? Are you sure that when you are walking out in the garden, the panther doesn't come from the jungle and take you away? There is one panther there. I have seen it, black one. Are you sure when you go out, not here, this is so beautiful, even in your house, that one truck doesn't come and finish you off? Like that one Sri Lankan mother and daughter on Springville Road. They were standing in the bus shed, waiting for the bus. Now, every day they were doing the same thing that day. One car came from the last 3 rows, three lanes are there. He was on the other lane and he was driving a little bit haphazardly and they thought, they moved a little bit on this side. He came from the other side and killed both of them. From one moment to the next, they were gone. One moment to the next. My cousin's husband, he was coming back from work on cycle in Bangalore. There was the truck in front of him stopped. The truck behind him didn't stop.
Oh,
Crushed beyond recognition. One moment to the next. But we believe that it will never happen to us in our life, isn't it? What may happen? Heart attack doesn't tell you that it is coming. Stroke doesn't tell you that it is coming. Death doesn't tell you that it is coming. Learn to recognize. Learn to be ready for that moment. That is the spirituality. And the best way is take the Lord's name. Simple love. Vaikhari Madhyama Pashyanti Para. You are speaking all the time something or the other anyway. Why not the Lord's name? Let the whole world go to dogs. Don't worry about the world. Let Him handle the world. You handle your mind. Don't worry about the world. These convictions, by listening is one thing, but you have to interpret it in such a way so that they become convictions in your heart. Then something can happen. Then change will come about. So the Lord is the source of all joy. He is Satchidanand Swarup. He is the Anand. He is the material. The material out of which He is made itself is the joy. And when that joy goes away from us, even for a moment, there is deep pain within our heart. And that pain everyone is feeling. That's why we create relationships. That's why we run after the world, to fill up that emptiness inside. But the world can never completely fill up that emptiness. The only one who can fill up is the Lord. And once you have experienced it once, that without doing anything or doing something, you are content, you are fulfilled. Not just fulfilled, utterly fulfilled. And when that fulfillment goes away from you for even an iota of a moment, there is deep pain. That, Lord, why have you given up on me? I am trying to remember you and you are not helping me. And then the songs come out. Then the scriptures come out of such a mouth of a master. In that moment of anguish. And in this way, by remembering the Lord again, he finds his mind again turns towards the Lord and comes to find the peace and tranquility in the devotion that he is having in his heart for the Lord. And that is the way to that our Narad Muniji is explaining. So therefore, Devarshi Narad's way is an integral way, and it embraces not only the cross worship, but also the subtler worship, which is through the speech, and the conclusion is that all actions, whether at thought, word and deed, should be dedicated to the Lord, and whenever they are not being dedicated, it should not be, it happens like this, not like that. No, for even one moment you are not with the remembrance of the Lord, there is deep anguish in your heart. And in this way, Naradji concludes his definition of the devotion. Then, Asti evam evam. This is the 20th sutra. Asti evam evam. Let it be exactly as described above. Evam evam asti. This is said thus. Meaning, this is the conclusion. There is nothing more that can be added to it. Nothing more that can be added to it. See, when you look at it from this point, that self cannot be known, from Vedanta point, self cannot be known through the mind, isn't it? It says it's anirvachaniya, it's beyond the words, it's beyond emotions, it is beyond conceptualization, ideation, isn't it? Because it is nirgun, nirakar. Then what do you have as a tool? Only the mind. And that mind gets frustrated, I can't come to know the truth, then what do? Then you do this. Chant the name of the Lord, remember the Lord, worship the Lord. Because even if by the grace you realize, after realization the mind is still there. After realization mind is still there. What will that mind do?
Thought factor.
Mind will not, it will think of something, isn't it? But what will it think of? Whatever it has been programmed with. What is the prarabdha that will function, that will pour out of that mind? See? Yes. So here we are going from the other way, from the conditioning to unconditioning. What I was just saying was from unconditioning to conditioning. So once you have come to know yourself in Vedanta, then you see everything as one. But we are in the mind, and in the mind, the journey of the mind can never come to know the truth. Mind has to dissolve. And that's exactly what is happening when it is taking the name of the Lord. It is dissolving slowly, slowly, slowly. From Vaikhari to Madhyama, Madhyama to Pashyanti, Pashyanti to Para, where it is dissolved completely. So here Narad Muni ji is saying, this is the only way, this is the conclusion of the definition of devotion, this is the very essence of devotion, and there is nothing more that can be added or subtracted from it. And this way, even though in many, even in Upanishads, this type of conclusions come about, where it is said in, I think it is Kena Upanishad, where it comes, I don't have it here, there also this word evam evam, after every verse it is coming, that this is how it is, this is how it is, this is how it is. There's no other way of looking at it. So if I say to you that eyes can only see, iti evam, there's nothing wrong in saying that, because only eyes can see, and that is the truth. There's nothing more can be added or subtracted out of it. So it is a reiteration of the position that Narada has taken with regards to devotion. He says this is what it is, and therefore this statement is reaffirming to our minds that this is the conclusion. Sutra 21, Yatha Vrajagopikanam, Yatha Vrajagopikanam, just as the love of the gopis of Vraja, and we'll look at it in our next class. You can sit for some time, you can do some, anyone knows any mantra to chant? तुम chant करते हो क्या? नाम संकीर्तन कोई आप करते हो? Looking at daughter, daughter looking at mummy.
जिस देश में
नहीं, नाम संकीर्तन करो, नाम